Good afternoon, folks. Thank you for coming back in to Hall 1 here. Our next speaker is, oops-a-daisy, a good carrying voice. Next speaker is Ayorinde Thompson John, Executive Director of Equities Technology and Head of Agility, Delivery and Transformation at JP Morgan Chase & Co. So she gets the award for the biggest name badge this morning.
Hello, everyone. Let me start by letting you imagine a situation. Imagine you're expecting your first child, maybe a boy, a girl, and it's this child you're expecting to, nurture, protect against all the odds and all the challenges of life. And this was actually the experience of the current CEO of Microsoft, Satya Nadella, who welcomed his son, Zain, in 1996. The challenge for Satya was that Zain was born prematurely, several weeks premature, and he also was born with severe cerebral palsy, which meant that he was going to require 24/7 treatments or 24/7 care. This event was a decisive turning point for Satya. It changed his worldview and the way he was going to approach his life, but also his business, his life as a business individual as well. It brought a deep sense of empathy, and he regarded this was going to impact the way his strategy for Microsoft was also going to be implemented. So we all know about accessibility, and this was actually one of the turning points that led Satya in 2017, as he opened up about this event, to start implementing more accessibility in Microsoft's products. It also led him to develop more diversity in terms of hiring, being more open to people with disability. So we can see here that having this type of life events can significantly impact the way senior leaders implement their strategies in the face of adversity. So just a bit of a piece of introduction here. So yes, I have probably the longest name in all the panelists and speakers of today's event. My name is Ayorinde Thompson John. I head the transformation for Agile and products at JP Morgan in equities technology specifically. So this is a group with over 2,000 individuals worldwide, spanning from North America, Europe, and APAC, including India, Hong Kong, Singapore. And my role has been more focused in the past 25 years of career on transformation, change, from a technology perspective, but also from a business perspective. So that's me in a nutshell. So today I'm going to try to answer 3 questions for you. First of all, looking at how leaders can evolve from the traditional command and control to becoming true leaders, as we've experienced already in the case of Satya. And how can those transformational leaders embrace change and innovation? What does that mean to be a transformational leader, and what is the impact of that mindset in the way the leaders embrace change? And the third question, which drives closer to some of the topics that we've been discovering over this morning, is collective intelligence. And in particular, how can we tap into the collective intelligence of people and machines? So we'll look at the fact that leaders don't only have an impact within the organization, they also have the potential to develop innovations which can transform society and also the way we work. And that's also a fundamental key question that's been discussed since these morning events. The way we work and the way we relate to others and to technology. So looking at the case of Microsoft and the use case of Satya Nadella, he became CEO in 2014. At the time, Microsoft was doing okay, but it was struggling somehow to adapt to some of the shifts, especially in terms of mobile and cloud computing. With Satya's arrival and his history, he quickly recognized the need for the company to adapt more rapidly to the changing tech landscape. So under his leadership, Microsoft shifted from a focus which was more traditional software to more cloud computing. I'm sure you're familiar with Microsoft Azure, and artificial intelligence, as this post demonstrates. Nadella had a vision and implemented strategic initiatives which really transformed Microsoft into being the leader it now is, albeit with many competition, notably from Amazon, in terms of cloud services, and to position it strategically for growth in the digital age. Microsoft's position in networking and software development platform was also consolidated. So that's from a business, from a strategic standpoint. But again, this goes hand in hand with culture and the way the organization is structured. So in terms of fostering a culture of innovation, collaboration within Microsoft, and I talked about the diverse hiring strategy, and most importantly, encouraging employees to experiment and to take risks, to think outside the box. And diversity in the workforce, not just the usual type of diversity, a multiple type of diversity, and I can explore that as well. The workforce profile and to contribute to the acceleration of innovation. Some studies have demonstrated that a diverse workforce, especially a workforce that focuses on diversity of thinking, can definitely trigger innovation. So what are the characteristics of what I would call a true leader? So first of all, let's set the scene. Command and control, you do what I say, and that's it. True leadership, first of all, we'll look at emotional intelligence, being able to understand the perspective and the emotions of the team members. It might seem like a theory, however, it's very, and in my experience, very effective in order to tap into the intelligence of all of the workforce. With a span, like I said, of 2,000 individuals across the globe, it's impossible to completely neglect the opinions of multiple individuals. So emotional intelligence, empathy, and again, we've seen that with Satya's experience, it's not just a theory. Our own personal journey will influence the way we do our work. So being emotional intelligence, being able to listen, to seek feedback as a leader, as a team lead, I seek feedback constantly to be able to do my work better. I'm not arrogant enough to say, well, my opinion is what matters and you can just be quiet. So that involves also having a clear and compelling vision. So being, what I would say, purpose-driven, and to envision new possibilities and opportunities and guide the organization with a sense of purpose. And this is completely opposite to what we traditionally see as just being focused on the bottom line. Obviously, as a bank, JP Morgan will focus on the bottom line. We need to drive effectiveness. We need to ensure that the investment that we make have a good return on investment. However, as many of you will know, there's a heightened importance on corporate social responsibility and how we impact society. On multiple occasions, as we've deployed the Chase Bank across the UK, Jamie Dimon has put a high emphasis on what we actually implement into society, what we can give back. So driving that type of vision into the organization and making sure that everybody's bought into that vision. So being purpose-driven in terms of a leader. In terms of Satya's situation, he also ensured that paid parental leave in the US for 12 weeks, which is quite a feat if you consider that traditionally maternity leave could be somewhere around 3 weeks, 3 weeks, yes, actually 3 to 6 weeks, moving in up to 12 weeks. It's a massive undertaking and also influencing the suppliers to do the same. So being purpose-driven, and this leads also to a mindset which is open to innovation and creativity. Innovation and creativity, diverse individuals working together, being open to the opportunity to fail fast, and it's okay to fail. So being in a psychologically safe environment, which means that people are not afraid to make decisions, people are not afraid to express their opinion, and this is what will contribute to effectiveness in our teams. So in a nutshell, these characteristics enable our leaders to inspire change, to drive innovation, and create environments where all individuals and the organization itself can thrive. We come to my little preferred section here, collective intelligence. So we talked about tapping into the group thinking, diversity of thinking. What does collective intelligence mean in this context? Being able to recognize the potential of all individuals involved in a team or an organization. And this aligns very closely with implementing Agile transformation. As you may know, Agile is a mindset. It's not about tools and processes, although yes, you will use tools, and yes, you will implement processes, you will use frameworks such as Scrum. However, the key point is really using Agile, tapping into Agile as a mindset, a different way of thinking. So the first point here is continuous learning and cooperation. So this links to the key point is collaboration and learning. To be able to acknowledge and celebrate the examples of collaboration. In Agile, we encourage collective estimating, for example. So if you have a team, you as a tech leader will not come up with estimating how much time or how much effort is going to be required for the implementation. You would gather your team together, whichever the level of seniority of the individuals, thus that diversity of thinking. It doesn't matter if they're just junior analysts. Yes, they may not have as much experience about the code and how much effort it will require, but they can still participate in that estimation exercise. And that's really critical. So Agile teams encourage collective thinking, encourage collective estimating as an example. And the idea is have the team work together to define the how. How are you going to implement this piece of, develop this piece of software? How much time do you estimate this is going to require, or how much effort on complexity is going to be required? So that continuously learning and continuously cooperating is one of the key dimensions of collective intelligence within an organization. Secondly, innovation and experimentation. Again, Agile is at the center of this. A good example is how do you implement retrospectives? So if you're familiar with Scrum, you will know that potentially after a 2-week sprint, you will be required to have a retrospective with your team. And in that retrospective, you will review what went wrong, what could be improved, what were the bottlenecks, what were the pain points. And during that exercise of doing this retrospective, which could be an hour or so, maybe more in an ideal scenario, you deep dive into your continuous improvement opportunities. In JP Morgan, in my organization, we've identified having actually an issue type. continuous improvement that you would identify that would enable the team to focus for the next sprint? What are the things that you can implement? Is it automation? Can we go faster? Can we, is it some learning that we can implement that the team needs to share? Sending them to an event like this one to learn more, potentially, could be continuous improvement. So these are the second dimension: innovation, experimentation. You can also have monthly hackathons, so that's encouraging innovation. So there are some teams that have implemented those type of things. On a monthly basis, they'll save half a day and have a monthly hackathon, for example. And actually, we've seen some wonderful pieces of engineering being developed during these hackathons, just letting individuals' minds be open to innovating and then being able to implement. And again, the concept of failing fast and being able to move on, and psychological safety. Feedback and iteration, again, Agile at the center of this type of concept. Being open to feedback, like I said, as a leader, my team lead, being able to be open to the feedback of my team members, but also as a stakeholder and in the way that the teams relate to their stakeholder. At the end of the sprint, you would have a sprint review, and you would be able to connect with your business stakeholders to show and tell your piece of your iteration or demo, what you've been able to develop. And in that session, you will receive feedback. That would enable you to be more adaptable, enable the team to be more adaptable, and rather than wait until several weeks before presenting the iteration, the outputs, being able to receive that feedback, making sure they're on the right track, heading to what the expectations of the stakeholders. And focusing more on outcome rather than outputs. It's not just about releasing code, it's what is your business stakeholder trying to achieve? Are they, how much market share are they trying to increase by adding such and such widget? Does it even make sense? And being able to as well understand why they are doing this initiative or requesting this change, to be able to feed back to them as well. So not just be a passive developer, being able to understand the business that you're working for. Diversity and inclusion, we really cannot get away from this concept. So again, the concept of teams, being able to actively recruit diverse teams, not the simple standard individuals that you'll expect, but have individuals from diverse backgrounds. And in Agile, we refer as well to cross-functional teams. So in a normal team, you might have UI specialists, and they all only focus on UI. You might have the server specialists only focusing on the server side. Then you might have the testers doing their own thing as well. And each of the different teams working in silos. If you bring the teams together as cross-functional teams, you then have what you call the vertical slices. So you have a group, a couple of UI experts, maybe developers, testers, all working in the same team, which stops the hands-on and hands-off and the pain points and the bottlenecks, which tends to happen in these horizontally sliced teams. Then you look at that collaboration across the silos. Again, within the team, cross-functional teams, but within the organization, you can have different areas of the organizations that have interdependencies. So being able to break these silos, in my organization, we will be looking at quarterly planning in the context of bringing different areas together, at least at the beginning of the quarter, to define what are the dependencies and understanding how these dependencies work in their favor or against them. So trying to break these down in advance of the quarter so that when we get to the sprint, we don't have to be blocked by these type of dependencies. So in a nutshell, collective intelligence in an organization enables us to solve these complex problems, and Agile at the center of it. Where does a machine fit into this? So we've talked a lot about AI in previous sessions, and we can't really escape this conversation when we talk about teams and collective intelligence. So there are multiple examples of how AI can be implemented as a tool, but also as an assistant. I won't go into all the technical details, but how can we, in our day-to-day life, how do we collaborate with AI? We don't need to go very far. I'm sure you all have cars and you all experience using driver assistance, standard cruise control, automatic braking, even lane departure for some of us, collision avoidance. These are some of the examples which are standard really on our day-to-day lives of collaboration between AI and human. So it's not anything completely sci-fi or out of the ordinary. Even things like predictive maintenance, where the machine will observe the trends of the car and be able to notify when it's time for maintenance. In industry, AI as a peer, code review, you might all have heard of copilots. So accelerating the process of automation, thereby having the peers review your code, that's a standard process. In this case, the peer is the AI. So again, that collaboration, we talked about the cross-functional team in a way. The AI now is part of your team as such. Virtual assistants, so again, something very common in banking. We've now deployed it increasingly within the organization, not just with our customers. Having the virtual assistants assist the traders, for example, just simple information, or is my trade being processed, and the assistants will respond and give in feedback, or is my password, I need to reset my password, or what is going on with the system, and then again the assistants will respond. So these are opportunities, and again, our CEO, Jimmy Dimon, has publicly presented how AI is going to be increasingly part of our day-to-day work, and our assistant, our colleague, in a way, to a certain extent, to streamline our internal operations and save us time by answering some routine questions. So we've done at JP Morgan quite a lot of work in this ability to use these new technologies and being able to be more responsive in these changing times. Finally, I'd wrap up with the concept of superminds. So this is a concept from one of my teachers at MIT, Thomas Malone, a book that she wrote, Human-Computer Superminds, Redefining the Future of Work. So this invites us to think a bit more broadly about this conversation, which I don't think we can avoid. How are we going to collaborate, human and machine? It gives the example of CEOs and defining strategic plans for CEOs with using machine learning to observe how humans make, or how the CEOs make the decisions, so start by suggesting options to the human, and then getting better and better at predicting the best option. This human and computer strategic machine will keep generating strategic plans to be immediately adaptable to the changing environment. So a very, very powerful competitive advantage, potentially, to build differentiation. So in the words of Malone, that means we'll be able to combine people and machine to create superminds that are smarter than any groups or individuals our planet has ever known. This food for thought, which leaves us with the question, how are you going to tap into this new era of being partners with AI within your organization or within your day-to-day life? Just to wrap up on some conclusions to the questions which I posed at the beginning, how can leaders evolve from traditional command and control, empathy, diversity, purpose, transformational leaders embracing change through agility, continuous learning, and continuous improvements. And finally, how can organization optimize the collective intelligence of people and machine, collaboration, innovation, and AI as an assistant? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that. As ever, we've got microphones in the hall, so if you want to stick your hand up, you can ask a question, or you can do it via Slido, one way or t'other. Doesn't make any difference. Has anybody got a question they want to ask? Gentleman here, please. Hi. It's okay. We'll get a mic so everyone can hear you, sir. If you could introduce yourself as well, please. Right, thank you.
Hi, my name is Pete Preston. First of all, I want to say thank you for a stomping presentation, really taking us the whole gamut. You touched about psychological safety and failing fast. In an environment where you don't have psychological safety, I'm Nigerian, I've been here 32 years, I find that they fear failure. And I think that would be because there is no safety net. So they don't have that ability to fail, so they have to succeed. Is that in itself not a driver, that ability to not accept failure as an option? Thank you.
Okay. There are two personal dimensions there, but personal and professional. I think professionally, my perspective is always to be open to take risks. Whether it's as an individual or as a team, you need to be comfortable with failure, because I believe that failure will always happen. There are some investments, take an example of this organization, coming to UK with the Chase app could have been a massive risk, and they could have failed. And I don't believe that you're not going to do anything because you're afraid of failing. That would be totally counterproductive. You need to be able to measure risk and measure the consequences of what you're doing, right? So when you say fail fast, it's not taking unreasonable risk. There's always going to be some level of analysis and understanding of, so what's the worst that can happen if you take that risk. But I wouldn't say do not take the risk because you're afraid of failing, because that wouldn't be, I don't think that would be a productive way of doing things.
But what about this idea of that, the fear of failure being a spur to achieve? If you take that fear of failure away, are you removing that spur at the same time?
Well, the fear of failure being a motivator to achieve more, because again, from a personal perspective, potentially, you could say, well, if I am afraid of failing, then I will be more driven to do more, which is fine. However, you still need to be comfortable, because whether we like it or not, we will fail to a certain extent. There's always a risk. There's always a dimension that we will not fully achieve what we had set to achieve, but we keep on going. And when I say fail fast, is fail to a certain extent, but keep going. Keep continuing and iterating, and you don't just fail and stop. That's my perspective.
Question off Slido there.
Yes.
What was the biggest hurdle for you in the process of becoming a transformational leader? What was the thing you found most difficult?
The fear of failure, actually. The fear of failure. It's been quite a journey. I've been working now for almost 25 years. So I've always changed, in the sense that I've always shifted position. So I started my career in France. So I'm French. You wouldn't know by the name. It's been a journey, and it's been constantly trying to stretch myself, into areas where I'm not comfortable. So always moving out of my comfort zone. And the reason why is because I realized that if I stay where I am, first of all, I get bored, very bored. When I just, I get around a topic very quickly, and then I get bored and I need to move on. So, but that constantly shifting is fearful, because you're moving into some area that you may not have been familiar with, and being most often the only person like me in the room, it's uncomfortable sometimes, but going beyond it, to move on.
A friend of mine put it very well. He said one time, he says, there are some people out there who've got 20 years experience in the industry, and some people out there who've got 1 year's experience in the industry multiplied 20 times. They just repeat it time after they get to a certain stage and they don't improve, they don't grow, they don't frighten themselves every so often. Question again on Slido: how do you encourage focusing on and prioritizing diversity in tech and data, while diversity in the industry as a whole is still very unusual?
So it's been really proactive about it. As I mentioned in the example of Microsoft, having leaders who believe in those experiences because of what they've experienced personally definitely helps. In JP Morgan, it's the same situation as well. Having it driven from the top makes a huge difference. But then also having, the culture in the organization, colleagues who are open-minded, makes also a massive difference.
How do you convert them if they're not open-minded, or do you bother?
There are ways of influencing. I think it takes time. Whether it's the topic of diversity or even implementing agile transformation, people will always come in with cynicism. We've always done this the same way. Why bother? Why change? It's not going to work. I'm very happy with my comfort zone. That's in itself. But it takes convincing, influencing, showing that it works, coming again, failing, trying again, don't give it up, having been frustrated, and start again. So it just takes patience, and with all relationships, it just takes a bit of time.
Okay. Let me just check. There's no questions on the floor. Anybody thought of anything? There's quite a few on Slido, so we can work our way through those. This goes back to what we were talking about earlier. How would you encourage security-focused teams to take risks and feel comfortable with failure?
Security, yes. That's definitely a more difficult situation. I think the risks there are to be measured. It's the impacts, being not able to really assess the impacts of the situation. So having a broader view. We talked earlier about, in the previous session about data, being able to understand data, and having probably a vast amount of use cases and situations that they can take into consideration in order to make their decision. But definitely there is a dimension of heightened risk there, which, understandably, especially for our industry, we couldn't take lightly. And actually, in that sense, it tends to be quite risk averse, to be honest. But it's just the nature of that area that needs to just be slightly more cautious. However, again, I think it's just, when we say it's failing, is being able to anticipate the level of impacts of that failure, not just being blindly going.
Mm-hmm. And just to slightly summarize, one of the things I think you said was, in terms of diversity, or in terms of AI, if the data that's going in is focused and properly, it covers the entire gamut, it covers the entire spectrum, you're going to get a good result. If, however, it is limited, it is naturally skewed, it's naturally biased, which the situation would be within an organization if it wasn't diverse, you've got a problem.
Yeah.
And that's the argument, really, for having diversity.
Yes, that's definitely one of the arguments, yes.
Yeah. Gartner says synthetic data will dominate innovation and transformation, especially within financial services. What's your view on that?
I don't, well, again, talking about the piece on data, I think there's a multiple dimension of taking into consideration synthetic data, but also the real data that's being generated by the organization. I don't necessarily think that we should only focus on synthetic data. I think it will be a bit limited perspective. So I'm not sure I agree with that.
Okay. And at this point here, well, I'm paraphrasing here to a question, does Agile actually improve productivity?
Absolutely. Whoever hesitated on this. I believe so, for all the multiple reasons that, what's the alternative? It's working from a non-agile perspective is looking at waterfall. So you are waiting for, developments, all the different phases of the life cycle to be completed. And before you've completed the development or released into production, the requirements may have changed. Okay, so you've wasted time, you wasted money, energy, before you can actually deploy into production. So that's agile approach will increase productivity by ensuring that you get feedback regularly and you can course correct along the way rather than wait. So that in itself has to improve productivity.
Okay. And I'm going to make this the last question. How do you manage a diverse team that seems to be uncooperative?
How do I manage a diverse team that seems to be uncooperative? I've never had that problem, really.
Genuinely?
Genuinely, no. It's the way, I tend to manage, again, very collaboratively. Everybody should be able to bring their contribution to the table. So, I think we shouldn't be afraid of conflicts. There can be healthy conflict as well. So being able to vent and, express the challenges. I would encourage team members, if somebody comes to me, for example, and has a challenge with another team members, my role is also to be a coach, with my team and encourage them to, address all these challenges or conflict that they could potentially have. So those are generally addressed very quickly.
Excellent. All right. Can I thank you, or get you to thank Ayorinde one more time, please? Right.